Thank you. Thank you. I hope it wasn't me making that horrible noise, but it might have been. So that's me, Dr. Equitana, and more importantly, this is Ella. Now, Ella is a 4-year-old Azteca horse, so that's a paint and an Andalusian. And this is a very big day for Ella. Yesterday was an even bigger day when she arrived. But so Ella's mum is over there with the little baby. 2 years ago, Ella went out to a show, and then since then, Ella's been standing in the paddock. So I thought she was a great horse to have for this particular lesson. And when I came down this morning, she was showing me that she was just the perfect pick. So I came out of I brought her out of the stable, and I was walking her around to get a bit of exercise. She's been locked up all night with a head collar on. And she thought that was very exciting, really very exciting. And she has a couple of little tricks up her sleeve, does Ella. And one of them is to move her rump around to you, and the other is to turn and face you and rear a little bit. So I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. I think I'll go back to the stable and grab a bridle, and we'll see if that helps me out. So she has been very lightly started under saddle. So she's had, am I right here, a couple of rides maybe, as a 3-year-old, and then put back out in the paddock. So I knew she'd worn a bridle before, so that was good. And then I thought, well, what I need to do with her is start a conversation, and that's what we're talking about today. So I thought, oh, isn't this great? I can get started at 7 o'clock this morning instead of starting right now in front of everybody at 10 o'clock. So we did have a little bit of time out there, and I started to open that conversation with her. Have any of you ever taken a horse to a new environment or something and had it come off the float like a kite? Yeah, and you've got it at the end of the string and you're being pulled around. Yeah, everybody has, everybody's nodding. We've all done it. And so what I want to show you today is a better alternative. And I think it's better for the horse, and it's certainly better for the horse. It's certainly much safer for you as well. And I think that's what it's all about, because I think if we can stay safe, then the horse's welfare is much better protected. And also, it's about the horse. You know, quite often we sort of think, oh, well, if I trot her around for long enough, or if I lunge her for long enough, she'll get over it. You know, I'll just sort of work her into it, she'll get over it. But quite often they don't. And you can see Ella's not lacking in weight, and I expect stamina. So I certainly didn't have the stamina to be walking around for 3 hours this morning. So I needed to engage her brain a bit more. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, engaging the horse's brain so that we can have them focus on us and help them to learn, so to optimize training. I love the way she stands like this. She knows how beautiful she is. She wants to make sure you can all see her exactly, and I'll just hide behind her and peek around occasionally, which is fine. We love that. We love that. Last night, I had to tell you this. Last night I found out. So I was very grateful to Trish for loaning me this horse, because I live in Queensland, and it was a long way to bring a couple of horses for 2 demos. And I just thought, I can't do it to them. It's not really fair. Why didn't I find a horse down here? And so I rang a friend of mine who breeds horses, and she said, oh, I know just the horse for you. And she put me on to Trish, who very kindly agreed. And then last night, I found out that this horse was bred by an old client of mine who I've known for years and years and years. And she very sadly died a couple of years ago. And this was one of the horses that was taken on from after she died. And I just thought, oh, that is so special. I was just so pleased to find that connection. A wonderful Robin had bred her, and I think she arrived with Felicity as a foal at foot. So it's just a lovely connection now. I was really pleased about that. So a very special horse. But, you know, as I say, she wasn't having a great day this morning. And so what I do is I try and assess my horse's emotional level in any situation out of 100. So I say if 100 is the kite, gone nuts, probably the kite escaped, and a 0 is the horse lying in the paddock asleep, all right? So a 50 out of 100 is just going to be your horse perhaps grazing, you know, just having maybe being standing at the tie rail, but not emotional, not asleep, just right in the middle there. So what I want the horse to do is I need the horse to be a little bit above that, but not too much. So I need a little bit of emotion to train the horse, to engage the horse. So if you think about it, when you're back at school or university, for some of us older people, you can remember those teachers or lecturers that were really nasty, like quite scary. And they would shout at you, for example. And your emotional level was really high. And all you were thinking about was, how do I get out of this classroom? Yeah? And the horse is the same. So if we're really emotional, we're screaming at the horse's emotion is way too high. So if we're thinking about it out of 100, the horse might be a 75 or 80 or even higher. Yeah? And so we need to be not also that teacher that's terribly boring. And we all had a maths teacher like that, yeah? Terribly dull. We were looking out the window waiting for recess. We don't want to be that person either. And what I find is a lot of people have a very quiet horse, and what they do is they cross their fingers and hope that they can maintain that quietness throughout the ride. Yeah? And I call it hope training, yeah? Because if something goes wrong, if a tractor comes by or something happens, gone. Yeah? So what we need to do for training to keep ourselves safe and our horses happy is learn to regulate their emotional level. So when I was doing my honours before my PhD, I did an experiment and I took 100 horses and I taught them this little exercise that I'm going to teach you today. And I call it give to the bit. And it's just opening a conversation with the horse. And I taught 50 of the horses to give to the bit exercise and 50 just stood there tied up for I think 10 minutes while I taught the lesson. So the 50 that stood there tied up were my control group, and the other ones were my treatment group. Okay. So then I had a little exercise where I had somebody else teach the horse to back up through a 5-metre corridor. So you just had a pole on the ground against a fence, back up through there, off one rein and off each rein. So back up, turn around, back up, turn around. So 5 times each in a 5-metre corridor. What we found was the horses that had done the give to the bit exercise that we're going to do this morning, they actually responded really well. So they learned faster and they took fewer steps, so they were stepping bigger. They were completing the task more quickly, and they toss their heads less, which is quite important. Anybody got a horse that tosses their head when you're trying to do things with it? Yeah, it can be quite dangerous, and the horse gets like this instant reward, yeah? So it's not very helpful for training. So I thought that was a really good outcome, that they toss their heads less. So I think also if your horse is not tossing its head, it's not getting jabbed in the mouth, it's probably a much better learning experience. So I really want a horse that wants to come out the next day and say, hey, that was great what we did yesterday, what are we doing today? So we need to, what we're doing all the time then is having a conversation with the horse, helping the horse understand what it is we want. And I think sometimes what happens with us is we overcomplicate things because we make it more difficult than it is. Like, let's say we want the horse to load onto a trailer. If I look at the trailer is quite small, the horse is quite big. If I think about getting that whole horse into that tiny trailer, I'm going to have trouble with that. But I do know that this foot here is connected to the rest of the horse. So if I can get this foot here all the way to the front of the trailer, quietly, and all the way out again, quietly, then the rest of the horse is attached to it. So I can teach that. I can just pick the spot on the horse I want and train that spot, move that spot, because the rest of the horse will follow. So that might be a simple example. A more complicated example might be a flying change, for example. So let's say your horse is cantering around to the left. Do you like my canter? And I want to change to the right. So if a horse is cantering around to the left, this left hind is further forward than the right hind. So what I need to do is change that. So all I need to talk to is the right hind. And I need to say, hey, right hind, move forward and underneath the horse. And then I'll get that change. But I don't have to think about it. What often happens with a flying change is we're cantering around to the left and then we throw the horse over to the right. And what happens? We're disunited canter, the horse changes in front and not behind, yeah? We were talking to the wrong foot. We need to be talking to the back end. So go from here to here. It makes it much more simple. And I always think, and T said something to me yesterday. What was that you said to me, T? We can't teach something we don't understand. Is that what you? Yeah. Can't teach something we don't understand. And I think so just epitomizes what I'm talking about. Like, it's exactly right. So what I want to do is get it really clear in my head exactly what I want her to do before I ask her to do it. And so then we come to what sort of reinforcement do we use? How do we actually teach the horse this? And reinforcement is a very popular word at the moment. Positive reinforcement is particularly popular. I'm not carrying a pouch, I don't have any treats, but I do use a lot of positive reinforcement, and I'm going to talk you through that today. I'm actually on the council of the International Society for Equitation Science. If you guys haven't heard of it, go and have a look. It's great. Because what happened with me was I'd done horse training in the States. I spent about 8 months in Colorado with John and Josh Lyons, and I thought that was great, really good. And he was using science. He called it conditioned response training. That was really interesting. But I just thought there was more to it, And when I was in Singapore, I was riding in the Rolex, and I was. It was the final of the dressage to music, the Kerr, and I was on this off-the-track horse, and I remember leaving the warm-up arena, and my instructor said to me, "Wrap your legs around him, pick him up, and don't let him move till you get back here." And I'm like, oh my God. And I felt like that, like I was riding, my legs were wrapped around him, I had tension in my reins, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is not fun for me, not fun for the horse. And then I got the results back from the judge, and the judge said, hit it on the head. She said, horse looked beautiful on the outside, but I fear ready to explode on the inside. And he was so ready to explode. And so that's when I said, okay, there's got to be a better way than this. I want my horse to understand what it is I'm asking. I want my horse to come with me on this journey. And so that's when I went to the States and found John and Josh Lyons. Anyway, when I got home from there, what I felt was missing was just a bit of actually how the horse learned. And there still seemed to be quite a bit of correction in there. And I really wanted to avoid correcting my horse because it's very reactive, isn't it? If your horse, you sort of wait for the horse to do something wrong, then you correct it. I think I'd rather be proactive, teach the horse something I wanted to know, and then reward it. Yeah, that would be better. So I set about trying to find out how I do that, which is what led me to equine science as a very mature student, and then into a PhD, which I did with Paul McGreevy and the lovely Andrew McLean over there. So that was fabulous. And we developed this thing called EBARQ, the Equine Behaviour Assessment and Research Questionnaire. So if you have a horse, go to e-bark.com and you can fill out a questionnaire about your horse's behaviour, and you get a graph back which shows you how your horse behaves. It's great if you need a brochure. My stand's up there. You can get a brochure on it which has the address. Don't bother writing it down. And so we developed this questionnaire, which is a citizen science project. And what it enables people to do is benchmark their horse's behaviour. So I can say, okay, today, or this month, my horse is rearing quite frequently, bucking quite frequently, or not doing any of those things perhaps, or rushing backwards off the trailer. All these things, we can benchmark them, and we can say, okay, that meant that my horse scored quite poorly in trainability, for example, or independence, or boldness, or working compliance, or whatever it might be on your graph. And we can go away and we can change our training, perhaps our management as well, and come back in 6 months' time, take another EBARQ, and see how your scores have changed. It's a great way of benchmarking your horse's behaviour. And that's why I do that with all my horses, and a lot of people do. And what they're finding is they're being much more aware of the horse's sort of learning experience. So, keep an eye on me, I talk like nothing else. So what we want to do then, I'm coming back to assessing the emotional level of the horse. All right, so I said that a 50 is just not too emotional, not falling asleep, so 50 is fine. But what I found in that experiment, the horses that learned the best were the ones that had done the give to the bit, but they were also the horses that had an emotional level between what I would call 60 and 65. So about 15%, 10 to 15% above resting. So we don't want them like this. We want them, engaged, interesting. That interesting teacher at school that you told good stories and, you thought, this is really fun. I'll do this again tomorrow. We want to be that teacher. And so by just increasing the emotional level a little bit, we manage to engage the horse with learning. So that's what I want to do. I don't want it to be a 70. I want it to be probably a 60. When I came this morning, got around to the stable, she was an 87. And so that's okay. So what I have to do is I can't force it to relax. You can't force a horse to relax, can you? I can teach her to lower her head, but if she's really not relaxed, her head's going to pop right back up and probably break my nose on the way. So I can't force her to relax. I can make her more emotional though. So what I do is I just lift it a little bit. And once you start sort of being able to assess your horse's emotional level, you start to work out, how can I lift it just a little bit? And so that might be movement. So standing still, she might be less, or she might be, so if you're standing still, she's controlling the emotional level. Yeah, because I'm not asking her to do anything. So if I ask her to walk, a bit of movement, might lift it 1%, maybe 2. That's good. Because I can then say, can you do this? Like, I might pick up the pressure on the rein, ask her to give to the bit, release it, she'll say, yes, I can, and then I can reward her. That's opening the conversation. That's the first step. So I want to, ring her up and say, hey, can you do this? And she'll go, yes, I can. I just did that. I'll say, that's great. And I'll reward her for that. So we want to think then for this lesson about a spot on the horse we want to move, like we did with the trailer loading was the left front foot. A direction we want that to go. A motivator. We need something to motivate the horse to want to move, and a reward for doing that. So coming back to reinforcement, we use combined reinforcement. So it's a bit of negative reinforcement, pressure release, and it's a bit of positive reinforcement, some sort of reward. But the release is not the reward. Negative reinforcement is pressure and release. Because if you don't release, it's no longer negative reinforcement. It becomes what we call positive punishment because it doesn't go away. So it's just something that the horse has to endure. So we need to be careful. We've got these 4 quadrants of in the learning theory. So we've got 2 punishment quadrants, correction, punishment, same thing, positive and negative, and 2 reinforcement, positive and negative. So if you think about types of negative reinforcement, can anyone give me some examples? Whipping. Okay, any other examples? And I'll tell you why in a minute. Negative reinforcement. Leg on, thank you. Great example, okay? Leg on. That's a really good example. So let's say you want the horse to go from walk to trot. Put leg on. What do you do when the horse trots? You take it off. Yeah, thank you. Great, yeah. And so what that does with all reinforcement is it makes the horse more likely to do that behavior in the future. And we can tell it's different from punishment because your example, whipping the horse, is usually done, what do you do if the horse barks, for example? Give it a flog, give it a kick, something like that, right? That's punishment, correction, because, and we can tell this, because we don't want the horse to do that again. And that's the easiest way to tell. Because a lot of these things that work as negative reinforcement also work as punishment. So I'm going to use negative reinforcement now to ask her to walk forward. Good girl. Now I stopped clucking when she moved, okay? So that clucking is pressure. It's negative reinforcement because I released it when she moved. If I kept clucking, then it would be positive punishment. And actually what would happen would be she would desensitize to that signal and not respond in the way I wanted to. So it's going to make that behavior less likely to happen in the future. Your whipping example is lovely because we might also use tapping with the whip. Okay? So let's say I want her to go forward until I tap her with the whip. I'm going to release that or point the whip to the ground as soon as she's going forward. And if she stops, I'm going to ask her again. But you see how I managed to remain proactive. So I'm teaching her something all the time. I'm not trying to punish her for standing still. Yeah? So, but I can also use that same tap of the whip. Let's say she's pawing on the ground to smack her on the cannon bones or tap her on the cannon bones. Then it's punishment. I'm adding it, it's positive, and I'm using it to decrease the behavior in the future. So I think it's important that we know the difference always, and people get very confused about negative reinforcement. It's got a very bad rap. But what it does for me, negative reinforcement, is it gives the horse that direction. So we've got a spot on the horse we want to move, a direction we want it to go, good girl. A motivator, which is going to be my voice, or perhaps the whip, she's loving the bins. And a reward for doing that. Okay, you're okay. So, you know, I've got a lot of choices here, and I'm really pleased that she's showing us this, because this is what happens, isn't it? You get to a show and she goes, oh my God, yellow bins, my favourite. And so what I want to do is I want to try and remain proactive. And I've been walking around out there and I've seen horses running backwards in the wash yards and things and being jerked around. I'm thinking, okay, well, it's not actually working though, is it? So we're going to come straight back to this give to the bit exercise. I would teach it standing still, but what she's done is she's increased the emotional level to a 75, and I want to bring her down. So I can't do that really standing still, which means I need to increase her emotional level maybe to a 76. Good girl. And then offer her an opportunity to relax. So my spot on the horse is the nose. The direction is just down and in towards the chest a bit. Not behind the vertical, just in front of the vertical, and I want a relaxed, nice relaxed sort of frame. So if her pole is below her withers, we're on the ground, I'm really pleased about that. That's fine, you know, she's relaxing and engaging, that's great. So I'm going to try and hold my hand at an angle that it's going to be when I'm riding. So this is something that is really useful when riding, because what it does is it gives you that nice soft frame, gives you responsiveness to the bridle. Oh no, it's hard, isn't it, see? It gives you responsiveness to the bridle, and it opens that conversation. So I teach everything I can on the ground before we go under saddle, because it's so much easier for her to learn it on the ground. Okay, come forward. You can see here, so her emotional level's gone way up, which is much more exciting. And so what I need to do is focus a little bit on her, a little less on you. All right. So I think what happens when we don't ask the horse to do anything is they get a little bit lost. You know, so the horse is sort of flailing around, wanting some direction. So that's where the negative reinforcement comes in really handy. And you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, I only use positive reinforcement. I think it's actually really difficult to do, because the negative reinforcement is what gives you the direction. So my direction at the moment is forward. I wanted to move forward. Good girl. Huh? And what you can see is, I'll focus on her a little bit. So my negative reinforcement is picking up a little bit of pressure on this rein, this left rein. And when she drops her head and relaxes, I release that. And then I reward positive reinforcement by giving her a rub on the neck and telling her she's brilliant. So these things together will help her come into what I call the engagement zone or the bubble of communication. So I like to call it a bubble because bubbles are round, and when the horse teaches, learns give to the bit, the horse also rounds up, goes into a nice soft frame. So if I lose her attention, she bursts that bubble, and I can see it from miles off. What happens is she throws her head up, pricks her ears, sees the yellow bin, and bursts my bubble. And so it's really obvious whether I'm here on the ground with her, or whether I'm riding, whether I'm long reining. It's really obvious where her emotional level is and whether or not she's learning. She can't learn when she's not in the bubble, so I want to keep her in the bubble, focused and relaxed. And it really is about relaxation first and foremost. As we all know, you can't learn when you're not relaxed. You can probably memorize a few things if you're lucky, but you're not really learning. It's not going to be a solid lesson tomorrow if I give you a quiz. So it's much better. See how emotional levels come down? What is it now? Yeah, 65, yeah? About there? And so what other things happen? The first thing you need to be able to do really is be able to assess your horse's emotional level. So I need to be able to look at my horse and say, okay, out of 100, what is she right now? And so a few things change when the horse's emotional level goes up. The first thing is usually, any ideas? Head up, absolutely, thank you. Yeah, head up. It's the most obvious one. So if her head's gone up, her emotional level's gone up. See here, she just went up to a 68, just walking around that corner there. The more aware you are of your horse's emotional level, the better you're going to be able to regulate it. And so the next thing that happens, what else has she shown that have been signs of an increased emotional level? She's given us a few. Sorry? Yeah, going faster. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Going faster than she's asked. And that's a great one because I often get people tell me their horse is really foregoing. I'm like, okay, so your horse going faster than you want it to, and faster than necessary. And they go, yeah, it's really great. It's a sporting horse or something. And I'm like, okay, it's probably confused and it's probably way too emotional. I want a horse that will go the speed I've asked and no more. So horses naturally, if we think about it, they're naturally built to conserve energy. They don't waste energy because they might need energy to escape a predator. So if they're using more energy than they need to, then there's something not quite right. So you need to look at your training and say, oh, perhaps I could regulate that horse's emotional level a bit better. Perhaps I could engage that horse a bit more by teaching it some different things. And that will really help you and the horse to get more out of your training and for both of you to be safer. Good, so speed is definitely a good tell. What else? What was her most obvious one? Calling out, yeah. She's very vocal. She was very vocal this morning in the head collar until I put a bridle on and opened the conversation. So the calling out is a really obvious one. And it's a sign of distress, isn't it? Yeah, poor girl. She doesn't want to be out there. I don't want her out there. It's very stressful for her, very stressful for me. She's not my horse. So yeah, we need to help her and open that conversation with this give to the bit work. So she's doing pretty well now. Was there anything else you saw that indicated a high emotional level? Yes. Yeah, she was chewing on the bit or playing with her lips, was she? Yeah. So she's pretty much chewed on the bit since I put the bridle on her, but she hasn't had one on for a couple of years, so that's good. And that's okay. And anything else that people saw? Yes. Bit big and starey. Yeah, that was another one. Did her tail go up? Ears, yeah, ears went up. She looked at what she was, everything goes up basically. But whoever said the head is always the first thing. The head is always the easiest thing to tell. Right there, yeah. And you just could see her inside. Oh, went up to 68. Boop. And then she comes straight back down again, which is lovely. So I'm really pleased with the way she's going, because I was hoping she'd get a bit nervous about something, just so I could show you a change. This is a much easier creature to deal with than the one on the end of the kite. And so now I can say to her, okay, this is great. We might just start doing a little bit of give to the bit. Good for you. Oh, what a good horse. You're a clever girl. And the other thing she was doing with me this morning was crowding me. Does anyone have a horse that tends to crowd and push you over a bit? Yeah, it's quite, it can be a bit dangerous. It certainly seemed a bit dangerous this morning. So what I want to be able to do with her, once I've taught her to give to the bit on the left-hand side here, I want to start to think about her having, good girl, her having a clock under her chest. So we have a clock around here. If she's just doing give to the bit and she's walking around in a small circle around this arena, she's probably stepping with her left front, which is the only foot I'm talking to about 11 o'clock, maybe 10 if she's crowding me a bit. So this morning she was stepping to 9:30 and I was having to make all sorts of maneuvers. What I want to be able to do is get that left front to step to 10, 11, 12, 1, and 2. I call that reverse arc. She's going to be bent left, but she's going to be moving her left front to the right. So the first thing is to give to the bit, be soft in the bridle, be responsive, and then I want to just step that right there. Really nice step, okay? I'll get that step, I'll reward her. I call that shoulder control, or reverse arc, and it just gives me that little bit of step there. And so I didn't do this with her this morning because I wanted to see how she'd work out in here. I wouldn't expect her to get to 2 o'clock today, but if she steps to 11 o'clock or 11:30, then that's better than the 9:30 she was stepping this morning. So that's an improvement. So I say, oh, great, and I'm going to reward that. Because every time I reward her, she goes, oh, I'm a clever horse, look what I did. I'm a genius, I can do that again. And I just ask her to step, good. Good for you, good for you. Okay, we'll take another one. Good. And what this does is it gives you control of that inside shoulder. Just imagine you're in the dressage arena, you're going around, your horse is falling in, and you can just pick up that inside rein and put it on the neck and say, oh, just step out just a little bit, yeah? Without having to change her bend or change anything. And what the other thing it does, which is really helpful for us, is it gives us some shoulder elevation, because in order to step across, she actually has to elevate her shoulders. Yeah? If she doesn't elevate her shoulders a bit, then she's just going to knock into her other leg. So she has to elevate her shoulders. And if we look at Ella standing here, naturally, come on, show us Ella. She naturally carries 60% of her weight on her shoulders and 40% on her hindquarters. And we sit on her shoulders, which compounds the problem enormously. And we say, right, Ella, elevate your shoulders and put your hindquarters underneath you and jump the jump or turn around the barrel or whatever it is we want to do. And she says, well, no, I can't do that. So if we can teach her how to lift her shoulders from the ground first, then when we get on board, it's much easier for her to understand and to follow through with that. So for me, give to the bit, we get her responding to rein pressure. So pressure, release, reward. We get that combined reinforcement so that she starts to understand, I'm going to feel a pressure, I have to move something, it's going to be released, and then I get a reward. So she understands that. Then I want to talk to the feet. Because for me, the sort of neck and head of the horse is really the handbag. I'm interested in where the feet are going, yeah? And what I want to do always is move the hind feet closer to the front feet, yeah? So that's what I do next. So the shoulder control is the first step towards doing that, towards actually saying, right, where can I move this left front? Because I haven't moved from the left side of her this morning. So that's the only foot I'm talking to, just this left front. And what she learns is if the reine's here, she's fine. If the rein opens, she needs to move her left foot left. If the rein closes on her neck, she needs to move the left foot right. So it gives us this sort of puppet, yeah? And she remains calm because she knows nothing unexpected is going to happen, yeah? So I think that's really sort of the big lesson that horses learn when you start with give to the bit, because it's such a simple lesson. And you can, if you ride bridleless, or if you ride bitless, or your horse is too young, that's fine to have a bit on. Teach it in a head collar, teach it in your bitless bridle. What I will say is I go from a bit with a horse that can take a bit to bitless because I think it's more advanced. So I've done some testing with rein tension monitors, and I've asked how much pressure does it take to teach give to the bit in a bit, just a snaffle, and how much pressure does it take to teach it in a bitless bridle or a head collar. And with some horses, I came up with like 10 times the amount of pressure. So for me, I would rather they learn to give to pressure, because it's the give to pressure exercise. But if you've got a very young horse that wears a head collar, that's going to be the same to them, really, because they're not going to have felt pressure before. So, I've not put more than a few ounces of pressure on her at all today, and she's responded really well to that. So I think we always need to make sure that what we're doing with the horse is using less pressure, not more. I never want to desensitize my horse to rein pressure. I always want to sensitize my horse to rein pressure so I can use less of it. Because let's say I ride around always with 5 pounds of pressure in each rein, and it's not unusual. That means if I want to change something, I need to pick up 6. And once the horse, anybody ridden an off-a-track horse? No? Yeah. Okay, so talk about desensitize the rein. So it means nothing, does it? You pick up the reins, and for them, the rein pressure means go faster, it means go slower, it means turn, it means stop, it means go, it means nothing. And they're so confused about it. So what happened, let's say you've got an off-a-track, because a few of you raised your hands then, and this is such a great lesson for them. But what you need to realize is that your horse, your off-track horse, has been habituated to a lot of rein tension. So what we need to do is motivate the horse to respond in a way, yeah? So let's say she's not worn a bridle for 2 years, and even then I don't think she did much in it. So I picked up 2 ounces of pressure, and she went, whoa, I'll change something. What should I do? And I said, oh, if you just move your head a bit to the left. And she said, oh, I can do that. And so she was really light, and she has been the whole time. My horse off the track, though, I'm going to do the same exercise and pick up pressure, standing hand. The horse is just going to go. And let's say I pick up 5 pounds. And again, the horse goes, is that all you got me? I'm going to ignore that. I've been ignoring that for the past 5 years. And so what I need to do is I need to find that amount of pressure that's just a little bit more than that horse has habituated to. If you're lucky and the horse hasn't raced much, then it might be quite low. But if you're not so lucky and the horse has really learned, that doesn't go away. There is no answer to that question. You're going to need to find that amount. What is it? Just a little bit more? And immediately the horse moves, release it, and praise the horse. And what happens is you get that beautiful light bulb moment with the horse where it goes, oh, what? All the pressure goes away. I love this. I can do this. It's easy. So you're going to want to teach this on both sides of the horse. Good girl. I'm trying to keep my hand at the angle it's going to be when I'm riding, because I don't want to sort of reteach too much for her. It makes it simpler if it's at the angle that I'm riding. I'm just going to wait till she gives right there. Good. Yeah. Pretty good horse. I don't want her to move her nose too far outside the point of her shoulder. This is not a neck exercise, it's a pressure release reward exercise, yeah? We're learning to learn. We're not learning to move out. So this is what I don't want. If you've got a horse that's already learned that, or that wants to come around and nibble on you, I suggest you just lift your elbow so that the nose finds the elbow, and that will help you out there. And that will help the horse sort of not come past that point of the shoulder. Now I carry the whip in case she wants to walk backwards, because she can go anywhere she likes, but she can't go backwards. And I've just been given my 5-minute warning. The reason I don't want her going backwards is because backwards is a very easy option. I teach backwards really late. I wait till I've got everything forward under saddle, and then I teach backwards. The thing about backwards is it very quickly leads to rearing. And I've taught 2 horses to rear for demonstration purposes, which is pretty stupid, don't do that. The first one took me 45 minutes to teach it to rear. I had a good rear at the end of 45 minutes. I was pretty pleased with that. The second one was a few years later, and it took me 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And this was high. I didn't have time to get my phone out to video this horse. The signal I was using was exactly the same. I was actually standing on this side of the horse and tapping the hindquarter. Same signal, same everything I thought. But because it was a few years later, I was a bit more clued up on the horse's responses. So the first time when it took me 45 minutes, I was releasing when the horse lifted its front feet off the floor, just a little bit. Yeah? I thought, okay, I wanted to rear, that's what I wanted to do. But what does it have to do first? Lift its head, yeah, has to lift its head. And so with the second one, it's a really cute little Palomino stallion I had, I thought, oh no, every time he just lifts his ear, like this much, I'm going to release. 3 minutes, he was up over my head. And that's a horse that I'd had since he was a yearling, and he was started like this, you know, pressure, release, reward, everything. So he was looking for answers. And my timing was much better because I was releasing at the right time when he lifted his head. But it just showed me how easy is it to teach your horse to rear. I'm like, wow. And I often hear, you know, people come to me and say, oh, I sent my horse out to a trainer and he's come back and he's rearing. I'm like, did he bite at all? And he said, oh, he's a bit nippy, you know. And I think what happens is the person's leading the horse along, the horse gives him a bite on the shoulder or on the sleeve or something, and he gets punched in the face. What's the first thing that horse does when you punch him in the face? Yeah, he raises his head. And so what happens, particularly with something that's shocking to the horse, possibly painful to the horse, is 1 repetition learning is good enough for the horse. He's not going to do that again. And so then what happens is you're happily leading the horse along. He thinks about biting you, or moves his nose towards you and thinks, oh no, I know what's happening. And he rears. And suddenly he looks really unpredictable because this horse never reared, now suddenly he's rearing for no reason at all. But it's that 1 little repetition that's done it. So I would love to talk to any of you about your horses. I have a stand just up there on the right, and I've got some DVDs that I would like to gift you if you would like to come and talk to me and leave me a Google review about what you saw today, okay? So come and talk to me. I would love to have a chat. I've also got a fantastic free online community, and we meet every Wednesday morning, and we meet on Zoom and we chat about your horse and your training. And inside that community is a video library. You'll find this lesson in here. You'll find hips to the fence, which is a great lesson for teaching a horse to stand still by the mounting block. You'll find some shoulder control. And tomorrow's demonstration, if any of you are here, I'm doing long reining, so wish me luck because I don't think she's quite ready, but we'll see how we go. You never know. No, tomorrow's demonstration I think is at 2 o'clock and it's in the Greg Grant. But I'm up there, come find me. Look forward to talking to you. Thank you. Oh, clapping.